Before humans learned to give names to the stars, before lovers pointed at the night sky and swore eternal promises, the heavens already existed, vast, silent, and precise. Up there, time did not flow the way it did on Earth. It did not rush forward or hesitate. It moved like threads of light, crossing and weaving together, holding the universe in place. Every star had its position. Every constellation had its path. Nothing was meant to drift. At the center of that order sat a young woman before a loom made of clouds and morning mist. Her name was the Weaver Girl. No one remembered when she first began her work. Perhaps it was when the first star dimmed and needed repair, or perhaps even earlier, when darkness itself was still learning how to exist. Her task was never celebrated with music or ceremony. It was quiet, repetitive, and essential. Each night, as the last trace of sunset dissolved into shadow, she drew strands of fading starlight between her fingers and wove them back into the sky. She mended torn constellations, strengthened weakening stars, and ensured that the night remained gentle enough for the world below to sleep. She never made mistakes. The heavens admired her for that. The gods spoke of her as a symbol of order. A presence so reliable that no one thought to ask whether she was tired, lonely, or alive in any way beyond her duty. In the celestial realm, emotion was considered dangerous. It disrupted symmetry. It created delays. And delays, in heaven, were unforgivable. The Weaver Girl had learned long ago not to question this. She lived as a star lives, burning steadily, silently, alone. Far below the clouds, where the sky felt distant and the earth smelled of rain and soil, there lived a boy who grew up without knowing the meaning of heaven at all. His name was the Cowherd. No one in the village knew where he had come from. He arrived one rainy morning, barefoot and thin, standing at the edge of the fields as if he had simply walked out of the mist. An old man who tended cattle took him in, not out of kindness alone, but because something in the boy's eyes felt familiar, quiet, patient, unafraid of hardship. The cowherd's life was simple. Days were measured by sunrise and sunset, by the sound of hooves against dry earth, by the slow movement of clouds overhead. He learned to read the weather from the wind, to recognize hunger in the eyes of animals, to wait through long seasons without expecting reward. The old man never taught him grand lessons. He only said one thing, over and over, as if it were the only truth worth passing on. You may live with little, but never let your heart become small. The cowherd carried those words into adulthood. When he was 18, the old man died. The funeral was quiet. There were no prayers loud enough to reach the sky, only a shallow grave and a handful of villagers who returned quickly to their own lives. Before dying, the old man left the cowherd one thing: a gray, aging ox that walked slower than the rest and was often left behind. "This one understands you," the old man whispered. "Take care of him. And he will take care of you." From then on, the cowherd lived alone in a small wooden house near the river. Loneliness did not frighten him. He had known silence all his life. He worked the fields, guided the cattle, and spent his evenings watching the sun sink behind distant hills. Sometimes, he looked up at the night sky not to pray, not to ask for miracles, but simply to wonder if anyone, somewhere, was looking back. In the heavens, centuries passed without meaning. The Weaver Girl continued her work, night after night, until one evening she paused. Just for a moment. Her hand stilled above the loom as her gaze drifted downward, farther than it ever had before. She did not know why her attention lingered on a small patch of earth, a narrow river, a simple house, a young man lying on the grass with his hands folded behind his head, staring directly at the sky. The moment lasted no longer than a heartbeat. Yet something unfamiliar stirred within her chest. From that night on, she began to look down more often. No one noticed. The stars remained bright. The pattern stayed perfect. The heavens saw no flaw. But between threads of light, something inside her began to shift. One summer day, when the clouds hung unusually low, the weaver girl stepped away from her loom. There was no ceremony. No thunder. She simply crossed the boundary between sky and earth, dressed in plain garments, carrying nothing but a quiet curiosity she did not yet understand. She descended near the river where the cowherd often brought his ox to drink. The first thing she noticed was the smell of wet soil. It was rich, grounding, nothing like the thin air of heaven. She stood still, afraid that if she moved too suddenly, the sensation would disappear. That was when the cowherd arrived, calling softly as he followed the slow gray ox that had wandered ahead. The animal stopped before her and bowed its head, strangely calm. The cowherd looked up. For the first time in his life, he saw a woman whose eyes reflected the sky itself, deep, luminous, endless. They stood facing each other, silent. No destiny announced itself. No prophecy was spoken. At last, the cowherd cleared his throat. "Are you lost?" The weaver girl hesitated. In heaven, no one was ever lost. Everything had its place. "I think," she said carefully, tasting the weight of human words, "I might be looking for a path." He smiled, not politely, but warmly, the way people smile when they are used to imperfection. "Then you can walk with me," he said. "I have never been sure I am on the right path either." They walked along the river as the afternoon faded into gold. The cowherd spoke of his fields, his cattle, the seasons that shaped his life. The weaver girl listened, forgetting the loom, forgetting the stars that waited for her hands. In return, she spoke of endless nights, of keeping things in order, of living where everything was always in the correct place, but never said who she truly was. "I come from a place where nothing is allowed to be out of line," she said softly. "Yet I do not know where I belong." The cowherd skipped a stone across the water and watched the ripples fade. "Maybe," he said, "belonging is not about having a place. Maybe it is about having someone to return to." Her heart tightened in a way she did not yet have words for. Dusk came too quickly. The weaver girl felt the familiar pull of the heavens calling her back. She stopped and turned to him. "I have to go," she said. He nodded. He did not ask where she was going. He only said, "You can come back if you want." She did not promise. She only smiled, then stepped backward into the rising night, dissolving into soft starlight. The cowherd stood there long after she vanished. That night, the sky felt closer than it ever had before. Above, the loom awaited her. The weaver girl resumed her work, weaving stars into perfect order. But every thread now carried a question. And far below, a man and his gray ox stood beneath the stars, unaware that the universe itself had begun to lean toward love. The weaver girl returned to the heavens that night, her hands resuming their familiar rhythm at the loom. Stars were repaired. Constellations were aligned. The night unfolded exactly as it always had. Yet something was different. For the first time, the silence of heaven felt loud. She found herself pausing between threads, her thoughts drifting downward back to the river, the smell of damp earth, and a man whose name she did not yet know. The cowherd's voice echoed in her memory, not in words, but in tone, unhurried, unafraid. As if time itself bent more gently around him. The stars waited patiently. They always did. Still, the weaver girl worked more slowly that night. Below, the cowherd returned home with his ox as the sky deepened into indigo. He cooked a simple meal, ate alone, and sat outside longer than usual, his eyes fixed on the heavens. He did not expect to see her again. People like her, he believed, passed through lives the way comets pass through the sky, beautiful, brief, and impossible to keep. Yet when he lay down to sleep, he dreamed of starlight touching water, and of a voice asking questions no one had ever asked him before. Days passed. Then weeks. The weaver girl told herself she would not return. Heaven had rules, and though she had not broken them yet, she knew how easily a single step could become a fall. But curiosity is a quiet force. It does not demand. It waits. One evening, as she finished repairing a dim constellation, she noticed something wrong. The stars were in place, yet the sky felt hollow. Without allowing herself to think further, she stepped away from the loom. This time, she descended more quickly, as if afraid she might change her mind. The cowherd was mending a fence when he sensed her presence, an instinct he could not explain. He turned, heart suddenly racing, and there she was, standing at the edge of the field as if she had never left. He did not ask why she had returned. She did not explain. They smiled, both aware that something fragile was being built between them, something that did not yet have a name. From that day on, she returned often. Sometimes she came at dawn, when the world was quiet and forgiving. Sometimes at dusk, when shadows grew long and secrets felt safer. Each visit lasted a little longer than the last. She learned how to walk barefoot across grass. How to laugh when her dress caught on thorns. How to listen to stories that did not end neatly. The cowherd taught her how to milk a cow, how to tell when rain was coming, how to sit in silence without feeling empty. She taught him how to read the sky, not for weather, but for wonder. At night, they lay on the riverbank, watching the stars she herself had woven, though she never told him that truth. "Do you ever feel," she asked once, "like you are living someone else's life?" He thought for a long time before answering. "I used to," he said. "Before I realized this was the only one I had." She turned toward him then, her face lit by starlight, and for the first time, the weaver girl felt something tighten in her chest, not pain, but longing. He learned her name slowly. Not from her lips, but from the way the world responded to her. Birds lingered near her. The ox followed her without hesitation. Even the river seemed calmer when she knelt beside it. "You are not from here," he said one evening, not accusing, just curious. "No," she admitted. He nodded, as if that answered everything. "Will you have to leave again?" he asked. "Yes." "When?" "I do not know." That was enough for him. Seasons changed. The weaver girl began to stay longer, sometimes from sunrise until the stars called her back. Heaven noticed nothing at first. The sky still shone. Order remained intact. But the weaver girl was changing. Her hands, once tireless, now trembled when she left the earth. Her heart resisted returning to the loom. Threads of light grew heavier, as if absorbing her longing. Below, the cowherd began to wait. Not anxiously, he was not that kind of man, but with a quiet certainty. He saved her a place by the fire. He spoke to her even when she was not there, trusting that somehow, she would hear. One night, when summer pressed heavily against the land, the gray ox finally spoke. "Your heart is no longer alone," it said, its voice slow and ancient. The cowherd did not look surprised. "I know," he replied. "Be careful," the ox warned. "Love between sky and earth is not without cost." The cowherd stared up at the stars. "Nothing worth keeping is." It happened on a night. Without moonlight. The weaver girl did not leave. She stayed. At first, she told herself it was only for one night. Heaven would forgive a single delay. The stars would wait. But when dawn broke and painted the world gold, she was still there, standing beside the cowherd, watching light spread across the fields. In that moment, she understood something heaven had never taught her. Perfection was not the absence of flaws. It was the presence of choice. She chose to stay. They married. Quietly. No gods bore witness. No omens marked the day. Only the river, the fields, and the sky that seemed to hold its breath. Their life together was ordinary and extraordinary for that very reason. They worked, rested, laughed. They argued gently and made peace easily. The weaver girl learned how to grow tired and still feel fulfilled. The cowherd learned how to dream beyond survival. Children came, 2 of them born with bright eyes and calm spirits, as if carrying both sky and earth within them. For a time, happiness felt endless. But heaven was watching. Stars began to drift. Not by much, just enough to be noticed by those who measured eternity. The loom stood empty too often. And far above, the Sky King finally looked down.